Press.
All right, good evening. This is December 2nd. It is 7 p.m. We are at the lower conference room in the Ritter Memorial Building. And I am Peter Beardmore, and I am calling our Capital Planning Committee meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be available to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. To participate remotely, you can use Zoom. Our Zoom meeting ID is 8927-8934-264. And there was an error on the agenda that listed a different meeting ID for telephoning in, but the correct meeting ID is the one that is associated with the Zoom link, which is the last four digits, 4246. So again, the meeting ID is 8927-8934-246. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of those discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. We've called the meeting to order. Is there any public comment from the committee?
Nope.
No.
All right. Is there any public comment from the public? Seeing none. Okay, chair's report. So first of all, I apologize for the issue with our scheduling of our last meeting. As I explained to you all in email, I neglected to realize that town offices were closed on Veterans Day and did not get our meeting posted in time. And unfortunately, this was the next closest availability where we could have everybody participate. My plan is I don't think this meeting should be too long. We can go through the list that I have distributed via Excel. And if you have rankings to submit, I can collect those and roll those up. The only person who has submitted to me via email at this point is Chris. And I have mine, so I can begin to roll up those rankings and distribute them at our next meeting at this point. Additional information that I have received, at the last school committee meeting, prior to the last school committee meeting, the select board approved ARPA funds for two items on our list. Those are the truck and plow that the school department requested, as well as the safety film for the middle high school. We discussed it briefly at the school committee meeting, and the discussion sort of revolved around, do we want to withdraw that request from the capital planning list because these items are going to be funded by ARPA or not? And the school committee more or less said yes, we should withdraw them so long as we continue to believe that there's going to be no problem with acquisition of those items. I spoke with the superintendent earlier tonight. She did not anticipate any issues. Mr. Carter Terenzini, the interim town manager, is here. Mr. Terenzini, do you anticipate any issues associated with the acquisition of those items?
I believe those purchase orders were being placed today. They're both on the state bid list. The fresh quotes came within the pricing that was given to the select board. So other than the unfortunate lead times these articles seem to have these days, I don't see any problem in getting that.
We'll get it under contract, though.
Yeah, I think it was one amongst the group Julie was working on today.
Okay. So barring any red flags, I think we will withdraw those items from the list so that they're not competing with other items that have not been funded. Just for everybody's for just the sort of historical accuracy, in the past, we have used ARPA funds as a funding source for the capital plan that we brought to town meeting. So if you guys recall, a couple of years ago, the town manager submitted the capital plan that included the 2 DPW trucks and an ambulance, and listed ARPA as the funding source for those items. So the select board approved the funding, and then the town meeting approved that funding as a funding source for the capital plan. It seemed a little bit redundant to me at the time, but
I requested it.
okay, but it was no harm, no foul, like
No,
that's
I
the way we did
requested
it.
it be on the article because at that point, I wasn't, and I still am not, but I'm not gonna give away the money either. I was of the belief that it really shouldn't be in the hands of 5 people, it should be in the hands of the whole town. And since that was the first time we were using it, I asked that it be put on. I mean, now we wouldn't, well, first of all, by the time town meeting happens,
The
it's not gonna
timing is
matter.
such that it doesn't matter at
Well,
this point.
yeah, it will have
right.
0 effect. So.
Yep. Okay, so is everybody okay with basically allowing the school department to withdraw those 2 items?
The only reason I could see to keep it is if, I mean, again, we don't foresee anything happening. So when we get to the point of, oh, we know how much money we have for capital and we go down the list, we could remove it, but it could keep its place in the list. So we wouldn't, in the spring, if something did happen, we wouldn't have to go back and re-rank everything.
That, I mean, that is the law, yeah, that is the logic
I
of
don't
the other
care
side.
one way or another, I mean, just wanna point that out.
Does anybody else have any strong opinions on that?
I don't really have an opinion either way.
Makes sense, I mean, to me, it makes sense to pull it, so no worries.
Okay. Chris, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think it's easier to pull it and it's gonna be funded.
Okay. All right. The other item that has been outstanding and was literally a conversation with the facilities director as of like an hour ago, is the number for the additional funds for the Ritter building. So if you recall, the facilities director had a line on his request, basically to bridge the shortfalls in the funding for this building. That included the roof and roof level windows, the trim, the windows and doors, as well as the ADA ramp project for the front. I had a few conversations with the facilities director today, as late as today, trying to get down to a number. He has just received bids for 2 of those 3 categories. So basically everything except the ADA project, which he still does not have a reliable bid on. And as of tonight, the delta in between what has been appropriated and what he has in bids, and again, those bids have not been fully fully approved or awarded at this point. That delta is, and this excludes the ADA project, that delta is $710,000, which is a very large amount, much larger than I anticipated for
That's
that.
without the ADA.
That is without the ADA project. That is for windows, doors, trim, roof level windows, and,
So that was the one that we didn't have a price for on our list, right?
yeah.
Did he have any ballpark at all for the ADA component or no?
He didn't share it.
Okay.
So my thinking at this point is that we, this is additionally complicated by the fact that there is still an open request to the select board for ARPA money for these projects, is my understanding. At least that's what he communicated to me
Not
tonight.
anything to that level, I don't something.
I don't think there's that much money available. But it could affect the total if some of the money were appropriated to help bridge that gap. My thinking is that we go with the 710 for the purposes of our deliberations and capital plan ranking. And it would exclude the ADA project at this point. It would have to, because we just don't have a number, and it's the 2nd of December. Any questions or comments on that?
If we're allowed to do that process-wise, that makes total sense to me. I don't know how technically perfect things have to be one way or another in this process, but I don't have it.
I don't know.
Whatever we're doing in this process has not been technically precise from day
Yeah,
one, so.
fair.
So let me just give you a little bit of background on this. So originally, the way this came to us was basically all of the delta for all of the projects for Ritter, right? So that included ADA, roof windows and trim, and then windows and doors. There were 3 separate projects. Basically, since we met with Mr. Ruth, they went back and forth in terms of either keeping them combined, as was the request that he made to us a couple of months ago, or splitting them back out, and we never really resolved it. So the conversation that he and I had tonight was, we put forth a request for the Ritter projects that were basically 2 of those 3 projects, right? So it's everything except the ADA project.
So it's a roof, the ADA, what's the third one?
So-
Windows.
Yeah, it's roof and trim. Now, the roof and trim project includes windows that are in the roof line. So there are some windows associated with that project, is my understanding. And then there is a windows and doors project.
Got it.
And the combined delta in those 2 projects is approximately $710,000.
And how much,
Those were
you're saying that's the delta, did he recall what we had
Yeah,
appropriated for those?
so for the doors and windows project, there was 120K,
Yeah.
of which 15 has already been expended for estimators and architecture,
Okay.
architects.
Yeah.
For the other project, I don't know the original appropriation. It isn't in the
But
notes that he
We're
sent.
getting close to that same thing that happens every year and happens more often, which is when the estimates are orders of magnitude off.
Yeah.
It's not like I said, oh, this is gonna cost $5,000 and it costs $5,500. It's like, I think it's gonna cost $5,000 and it comes in at like 300,000.
Yeah.
And
So-
I don't understand, somebody's gonna have to explain to me. I do estimating in my line of work, I realize it's not buildings and maintenance, but, we gotta be able to get closer than this.
When were the appropriations made?
So the roof and trim project, I believe, was 2 years
I think they're both
ago.
2 years ago.
The Windows one, I think, was a year or 2 older than that, but that one is,
They're both in the 2.
has
to
kind of
2.5.
gone down the path of APDC, and
Right.
there's been a lot going on with that project over the years, which has kind of caused some of this, which is an extraordinary delay. So this is one of the topics that I want to talk about in terms of what we do after the new year, in terms of what we're going to report to town meeting in the spring. And I think that trying to get some sort of process or standard or something around exactly what goes into an estimate and doesn't, and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
we have to deal with it, because if we just say it's a problem but don't propose a solution or a standard that all the departments would theoretically abide by if they were coming for capital funds, then we're part of the problem, not part of the solution. And right now, I kind of feel like we're kind of dancing on the on that line.
Well, I
right
mean,
now,
potentially, I don't know that I would agree that it's our issue to solve as far as the capital planning. it's my issue to point it out, and it's also my issue that affects ranking to me. First of all, again, I don't want this to reflect on the facilities director, and we haven't had one for more than one whole cycle, so for a year, for a while. But when a number comes in the day we're gonna be talking about rankings, I know where that ranking is. And that didn't change, so that number didn't change my ranking at all.
Fair.
Yeah.
Again, I don't see this as any indictment on our current facilities director.
No, I
This is
wanna
just
be
kind of
clear
the
on that.
nature
I
of the
agree with
beast. Yeah, but I do think that in the absence of us presenting a proposal for this ought to be the policy that we ask the select board to adopt together with the school committee, like this is the policy we're gonna follow in terms of how we're gonna get estimates, this is the minimum standard, whatever it is, like, I do think it's incumbent upon us to be able to communicate the issue and suggest a solution. Because in the absence of that, we don't have a town manager that's been around for a while and really kind of understands the history here. Like, we're the closest thing to it at this point, so. So that's my thinking on it. I do want that to be one of the, I've got 3 or 4 topics listed here that we can talk about later in the meeting, that I'd like us to kind of look at in the spring, but that's gotta be one of them.
Well, I'll just make one comment if I may, Mr. Chair, and that is, one of the feelings I get why this happens a lot is because I always feel like these quotes are rushed at the last minute. It's as if nobody knows, even though we have a capital planning process every year, that nobody knows is a capital planning project, and most of these projects have been on here multiple years. I don't understand why the day after town meeting, that the departments don't say, and I shouldn't say departments, some of them know exactly what they need because it's very repetitive, but some of them don't, like, okay, let's focus on, these are the jobs that didn't get funding, these capital projects. Which one should I focus on and get a direction from the town manager or the board or the community? And then work on those so that when capital planning happens, like boom, here, it's ready. But I always feel like it's like something that happens every year, like somebody's birthday,
Like a
and we
rush.
didn't put it in the calendar. It's like, oh, I totally forgot. I forgot that we do capital planning this time.
I agree. I mean, that's certainly my experience this year, and we, and I tried to accelerate this and was unable to for exactly the reasons that you just outlined.
Yep.
So, in any event, those are my updates. I invited Ms. Terenzini here tonight because one of the questions that came out of our last meeting is, what about the existing projects, and is there anything else that we should be paying attention to relative to a capital recommendation? And so this being our last meeting before we would theoretically approve a final recommendation, I invited him to come and have that conversation with us.
Great.
So Mr. Terenzini, you're welcome to pull up a chair and you can speak or however you want to do it.
Well, first let me comment on Mr. Alonso's statement. We'll have snow soon, and it'll be like the first time anybody's ever driven it, so let me just ask everyone to drive safely. What I'd like to do is distribute the relatively bad news of how little I think we can commit to the capital program this year, and how I got to that number. Chris, I can email this to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a copy?
Oops, sorry. Let me start with the free cash. It has not been certified as of this moment, but Ezekiel thinks it's going to be about $1,225,000. So then I take the town's policy on free cash, and it speaks about using free cash to increase the balance of the stabilization account to at least 5% of the current fiscal omnibus budget. That would mean around 2.6 million, you're at about 2.9 million. So that goal was satisfied and we don't have to commit any free cash to that objective. Secondly, it calls for 10% of the previous year's free cash to be deposited into the OPEB, the Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund. Last year you had around $1,870,000, so I simply took that at $185,000 being withdrawn to keep consistent with the policy.
Is that your understanding of the policy, that it's against the previous year's free cash? Or are we referring to previous year as free cash from the previous year?
So the way I read it, it says the previous fiscal years, so that would be, to me, the prior fiscal year. If it was to be read that what you're suggesting, because it doesn't say 10% of the certified free cash.
Right.
It says 10% of the previous fiscal years. So I suppose you could read it either way. That would make a difference of about $60,000.
Okay.
The fact that it says previous, I don't, again, the fact that it says previous, I would agree with Mr. Terenzini's interpretation.
Chris, what's your recollection of how we've calculated that in recent years?
I don't recall, but we should be able to just look at what we did the last 2 years and how it relates to the free cash.
Yep. Yeah, we should be able to track that against previous
I
year's
can
proposals.
pull the annual reports, that's what I did to get some of these
Okay.
numbers.
Yeah, it's just my interpretation is, because why we would be appropriating in May of 2005 a free cash number that was arrived at in November of 2020. What we do in May of 2025, tying that to a number that was arrived at
For fiscal
in November
23.
that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Unless it was
You may not even have enough money, right? Free cash may be 5% of the prior
Exactly
years.
right. Yeah. So you're committing a following year's fund source on some. You know what I mean? Like it just. I don't quite understand the logic.
I can,
We're
see
planning
this?
now,
Yeah, of course.
so we don't have certified free cash. So,
Well, typically we do at this time.
oh,
Yeah, this is close to when.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, it'll be certified before.
yeah, and I'll pull the numbers and go back and double check
Okay.
to see what you've done. See if I can get a sense of what.
Yeah,
you've
and
done.
obviously it's $60,000. I don't want to spend the whole night quibbling over it. But if we can look at that.
So the next part of the free cash is, it says at the town manager discretion, but basically I usually pull out what I anticipate in snow and ice deficits, if there's any major operating deficits, and a bit for what I call working capital, so that some of the money's always rolling into the next year, and I've set that at $250,000. Bill Bernard did not get a chance this afternoon to shoot me what your deficits have been each year, but I'll have that sometime tomorrow, and I can freshen this once I get that.
You don't have a dash or a number for the number 3, the CapEx stabilization.
So, what it says, it talks about putting the money in consistent with the stipulations in the policy on stabilization funds, which weren't really set forth that well. But it talked about in another section that the total of both the OPEX, what I call OPEX stabilization, and CapEx, that special purpose that you set up, should be 10% of the prior year's omnibus budget, which would be roughly 5.1 million. You're at 5.2 million.
Okay.
So since the first number was fixed and didn't need anything, I should have put a dash in
Okay,
there.
so just.
You're absolutely right.
So when you say CapEx stabilization fund, is this the special purpose stabilization?
I believe it's what you
The
refer to
capital
as
special,
as
the special, so,
the
well, it
special
says- I think there's several stabilization.
But this would be the
funds.
one
This
for
one's the
big
capital
trucks.
expense,
This
yeah,
is the
yeah.
trucks one.
the trucks one.
The first one, the OPEX one, is just the standard, before we have any special ones, the standard stabilization.
Because historically, the last several years, we've been putting $250,000 a year into that stabilization fund?
There is no overall goal that I could find.
Well, that's something that we want to talk
What
about.
percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
percent.
total, what is the asset base, building wise, rolling stock wise, and what would you set that at for buildings? It might be 2% of all building values. For rolling stock, it might be a different number.
Yeah, well, I think the
But
challenge
that's-
is that for the rolling stock, particularly the fire trucks, and what we're looking at over the next 5 to 7 years, is that there's a gap.
Yes, and you got 4 trucks that in 15, 18 years are all gonna be hitting that cycle
Right.
all at the same time.
Right.
So in any event, I come up with 790,000 for free cash. I see that you use a pattern of any unexpended previously committed capital projects. At this point, I can go through where we are on some of them. I used a plug number of 25,000 because some of them are in quite a bit of flux. That number could be dramatically more. You might want to think seriously about, well, I'll leave that to you. And then debt. I always try to keep debt the same, smoothed out. And so you've got 293,000 in debt service for fiscal '26 less than you have in fiscal '25. So whether we appropriate that as cash, raise and appropriate, or you monetize it as debt, either way, depending upon how severe the needs are that you're staring, if you decided to monetize it as debt, you should think in terms of 1.3 million over 5 years. So, you're looking at 1,100,000 basically, as of today. I've got to go back and I'll check the numbers on how you did some of these things, and you may decide to pull the plug on some of these capital projects, and then that money would flow in as well.
Well, we don't get to decide,
Yeah.
if town meeting has approved them, only town meeting can.
Yes, but as I read back through, they were all part of the motion, and that is the policy on
The
capital
town manager
projects.
can make the motion to
To what?
to withdraw capital.
Your capital policy is that the unexpended portion of prior years can be applied in the future, yes, subject to a town meeting vote.
Right, but if you were to say, we're not gonna do this project because it costs too much, or the thing's gone sideways, or whatever.
Only for that reason. There's no other reason except that we don't have the money. I mean, it is the expectation of the voter at town meeting that if I vote for that, it's gonna happen unless we go out to bid and we don't have the money, which is what happened with
Right.
the windows here and other
And
stuff.
yeah, and I've got some of these projects.
But in that case,
Right.
Tom, is it your understanding that town meeting would have to basically retract the item? Or is that the
Always.
discretion of the town manager to retract?
No, well, the town manager can make sure, can determine on their own that we're not spending anything up until the point, but you can't reallocate that money.
Right.
Without town meeting. But
The motions have been, a capital budget of, let's say $1.5 million.
Yeah,
And then here's, 2 sources of money, and then the balance are in a transfer of 89,000 from,
Whatever year.
litter, building, whatever, account number. It's pretty loaded up.
Right.
And they're just transferring from the one item, rather than letting it flow to free cash, and then having bigger free cash numbers. That's the way, at least that's
That's what we've done. yeah,
what I've been
absolutely.
reading.
Yep, that's exactly what's been done. That's-
okay.
So this is the projection as of today. I wish it was rosier.
But it's not, when you said how bad news, I was waiting for, that's not a bad news. That's not a great news, but it's not bad news.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we all know what some of the needs are, and
Yeah.
it's not where we'd like to be, I know.
Well, I think the needs are always gonna outstrip what we have. So. Well, not the needs, the requests. I guess you could argue the needs.
I can go over some of the existing capital projects beyond just the Ritter Building if you'd like, as to what their status is.
Yeah, I mean, there was a general question about, you know, in particular, are there things that we are missing in terms of gaps, right, for funding relative to capital projects that the voters are expecting to be delivered and we don't have a plan to deliver or something like that.
So essentially, you had a combined total of roughly $250,000 for the Ritter Building. I did break it in, there were no cost estimates on any of those elements. I did cause Chris to break it into 3 packages because I knew we were woefully short on any one of those elements. Let's call the roof and gutters and trim repair. Let's call that 105 that you had left. The bid, we do have one around 105,000, just about exactly that. The concern that we have, and those were just opened last week, last Tuesday, I believe, is that the second bid was 207 and the third bid was 315. I've always kind of been a belief that normally the middle number is the real number. So we're checking the references on the low bidder, and then I want to get them in and sit down and just have a honest heart-to-heart. Is this in fact the job? Did you really understand it? Because it doesn't serve anybody's purpose to have somebody take the job and then go belly up. So that's out there as a wild card. The windows and doors came in at $435,000.
So
the
Chris, so that 710
Yep,
that was, I took the 315 that Chris had given me, the high bid on that, because he was concerned about the validity of the bids. And the 430, he said there was a sizable add alt. So his thinking on that was that the delta is more like that it's more like 500.
and those numbers don't include any contingencies.
Right.
And I wouldn't suggest a contingency of less than 10% on these projects.
Brings you right to
My
500.
best guesstimate is that ramp you're looking at 400 plus or minus. So that's the Ritter Building. At the public safety building, you had a drainage project. There's 25K still left there. Chris doesn't feel that project truly is needed, so that's where I got the 25 as a starter.
Okay.
The senior center HVAC, you had 25. It's more likely gonna be 35 to 40. I've asked him to go get pricing now. If we can get the pricing fast enough, we might be able to backfill it with some ARPA money. The board's given me an amount of money to work with, but I'd have to have it fast enough and then arrange the contingency in some other way. The interior repairs at the Ritter Building, I've told them to put on hold.
I agree.
If you're looking at doing something here and there. However, we did have on the town hall roof, 65, the bid's a little over 100. My fear there, greatest fear, is the chimneys. We've asked them to do them first. Because if they start getting into it and they find out that that brick's loose, we gotta tear it down below the roof line. And that's gonna drive the price up dramatically, because that's gotta all be staged and tented through the winter, and such. But we've gotta do the chimneys first. Can't do the roofing and then find out there's a problem with the chimneys, because you're right back into all that work you just did. So we can backfill that with some of the ARPA money. Excuse me. The senior center roof was 35 you had. I backfilled it with some ARPA money. It came in at 40. Fortunately, there were no change orders whatsoever on that project. We got a punch list, but generally that's just to address things we already know about. The Brooks House, there's $25,000 for the foundation repairs. I've told Chris to put it on hold. To me, there's no point in expending those monies if, I don't know what the work product might come out of as a result of the special town meeting warrant article, so I've told him not to go forward with any repairs on that building. If there is some sort of structural thing he discovers, you know, a roof leak, of course, we'll deal with that out of the maintenance budget. The senior center generator is done. You had 90K. That project came in fairly well on budget. We did issue a change order on that, but again, the board let me have some flexibility on the ARPA money. TC Passio sidewalk has not been touched. That's around 25K. I don't know to what degree that's a safety issue, so that goes on hold through the winter at least anyways.
Yeah, it was raised because that's the building we still use for voting, and it was very much a tripping hazard for the seniors.
So we'll get, the town manager will get to that in the spring. There's no way to do that
Right,
now at
right.
this point. The Wallace Lake Marshall Pond is in permitting. The Keys project hasn't moved forward. That's 185K. Wallace Court is your basketball field, basketball court, I guess. That's in the spring. And then you have the TCP roof, where quite frankly, we've been trying to figure out what's the best section to tackle to give us the best life and continued usability of the building.
Did you say a Keating project?
My understanding is that there's a $185,000 capital item to reprogram, to change all the locks on all the buildings and
Oh,
go
the key
Keying.
program.
Keying.
I thought you said Keating, like the gravel coming on.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
Keying.
A keying, okay.
Okay, so, you know, really, in terms of when I look at recapturing, unless you do a wholesale recapture on this building, given what the Municipal Building Design Committee's doing, you do a wholesale recapture on the interior of the town hall. I really was looking at that $25,000 from the public safety drainage as the most obvious candidate for some reprogramming.
So then how did we get to 1.1? What else did you add to this then?
So
Oh,
I,
that was the debt relief.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, so some free cash based upon the way I read these policies.
So basically, you're taking debt service and you're putting it.
Well, when I call it debt service, whether you do it as raised and appropriate, I mean, you've been spending this amount, at least this fiscal year, for debt.
Right.
So what I try to encourage communities to do is what I call debt smoothing. I know what happens. You know, communities get the debt paid off, and, oh, thank God.
Right.
Now we have some budget relief. Well, yeah, maybe in your operating budget, but, you know, now you've got that, you know, when you replace that one fire truck and you tell the community it's gonna be debt excluded, and so it's just one time, well, by the time that one's paid off, you need the next fire truck anyways. So
But
yeah,
that fall-off
whether
money,
you do that
though-
as cash or you monetize it as debt.
But that, and maybe we can take this offline, but that fall off money, that $293,000, that's non-excluded debt service.
That's the non-excluded debt service.
Okay.
There's nothing you can do with the excluded.
How much was it
debt
about?
service.
200, how much is it?
About 293. I didn't bring that.
You didn't bring the
That's
excluded.
okay.
Um,
Yeah,
I'm
but that
putting
just falls off.
290. I'm just trying to round it off.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so this
Um,
is all total, there we go.
I mean, I can get you that calculation tomorrow. I just didn't bring that sheet with me.
So 315 puts us at 1.125, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
If I might, there are a couple reasons why the cost estimates have been so woefully off, if you don't mind me speaking. The first is too many communities rely upon the local contractor, the goodwill, and, you know, they try to put together the cost estimate as quickly and as cheaply as they can. I think you actually need to spend a little bit of money on some conceptual design, especially on buildings, and a good cost estimate. I think that's part of what happened here. The other thing is some of these projects are 22 and 23, which means estimate-wise, those were done in November and December of 21. And some of these are just going out to bid now. That's 3 years lag. And then you got pinched in the normal inflation and just construction's going crazy. And if you think it's bad now, wait until all of the infrastructure, the Build Back Better money, well, there aren't enough machinists and backhoe operators and bulldoze operators. Us geezers are retiring
Yeah.
somewhat. And so there's gonna be a lot of work going out there to bid. And that, my fear is going to make it even a little bit worse. So I think you got a couple things going against you, some of which I think you can account for, some of which are just the luck of the draw. And you gotta remember that all construction estimates are done looking backwards, And so if you're going into a downturn and you get a construction estimate, that estimator's looking at that old pricing. So we can still be wrong, but usually when you are at that stage, you want to add another 15%, give or take, for what we call design development. You don't necessarily really know exactly what you got to do just yet, and then 10% construction contingency. So I just thank you for
Thank you.
sharing those.
Yeah, I don't think we haven't had a past practice of applying those two additional burdens when you're dealing with, a free estimate and applying the likely overage when it comes to.
So, some of the estimates on equipment, when you're getting them from those on the state bid list, and you recognize you're really not gonna place that order for about 8 months. So you need to bulk that thing up by 10%. If somebody tells you that pickup's gonna cost $64,000, I would respectfully suggest you better be budgeting $72,500. What other exciting news can I share? There is a little bit of ARPA money left, about 200. But as you can see, we've got some projects. The floor at the DPW garage was budgeted for 60. It came in at 59 and change. We're trying to get the guy in there to get it done before December, because the contingency, that's the big thing. The roof at the DPW garage, not a great time of year to be doing roofs, but what we've asked them to do as soon as they're all done with their submittals, if they can't get their material for the roofing, at least pull off the fascia. So, because that's where any rot would be on the rafter tails.
Right.
So if we can pull that fascia off, we can maybe get a handle on, and they can maybe get that repair work done. So these literally are evolving. I wish they could stop bringing bids in at pennies, but these literally are evolving, so this even changed, not by much, Tom, by about $400 since I sent that out last week.
I hope you understand that what I've said as a select board member, $400 is not anything I'm going to raise an eyebrow at. So
No, but I wanted to make sure.
I think you know that already.
Yep. Oh, and the Marshall Park project, I didn't put that on here at all. I think that's a case by itself. And there's still a little lack of clarity as to exactly what they've spent out of their initial monies. The bills don't come in quite as quickly as we'd like.
Okay. All right, so suffice to say, the list of requests that we have, minus the 2 items from the schools and the amended item for the 710 for the Ritter building, at this point, you're comfortable with that list? that we've collected from the department heads?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. That's what we need.
you know, the one that makes me the most nervous of everything, Franco, is the Ritter building. Or strike that, the J.C. Passios.
Yeah, yeah.
And in particular, the heating system.
Yep.
That's what has me the most nervous of it.
Okay, what our plan, as I alluded to earlier, is to deliver our priority list to you before Christmas, which I think we're in good shape to do. But then, starting soon after the new year, there are some issues that we want to tackle relative to how to get to a 5-year plan that is something that is good guidance for the department heads in the town, as well as addressing some structural and process issues that we've been talking about, with a potential report to town meeting in the spring. So depending upon your timing and bringing on the new town manager and that kind of thing, we may be looking for help and guidance on that.
I do have a question, if I might. The 5-year appraisal, how are you funding that right now? Are you doing
We're
that
not.
as a capital item when it
5-year
hits?
appraisal.
Every 5 years, you have to do a full reappraisal of the town. The 4
We're not.
years in the interim are called statistical updates.
Talking about for the assessors?
Yes,
Oh, we did go out, this was our year, last year was our year to do that.
right, right.
So we paid for that as a consultant.
Did you do that
It's not us.
as capital?
No,
Well, we did it as an ARPA, that was part of ARPA, I think.
yeah,
But it would've been-
we did not
it would've
handle
been
that in
capital.
capital.
In the past, we had a regional assessor, so it was done by them, and there was not any special, there was nothing special we did. That was just known that as the regional assessors would take care of that. It's only now that we brought in a principal assessor that we've been faced with, okay, what do we do? You know, this is like kind of new, what we needed to do.
Would you view that as capital? Should I have submitted that this year?
Well, I mean, we have a few years.
Yeah, we got a few years. I mean, it could go on to the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
We certainly should put it out there that we need to do that.
Okay, I'll get you an estimate then, and I'll tell you the way I normally do it and plan to do it. Rather than waiting till the 5th year and then staring you down for $150,000 or $175,000, what I've done in my other communities is taken what that number is and appropriated 1/5 each year.
So then maybe it wouldn't, maybe it would be an op-ed in the omnibus every year.
Well, I don't put it in the OpEx, I put it in what I call capital and special articles,
Okay.
so it doesn't get extinguished at the end of the year.
But we wouldn't necessarily have to put it, it depends on how much that was. I don't know how much it was this year last year to do that. Was it like 110, 120?
Yeah, based upon the number of parcels you have, and some of the issues that you have with your site index and some other things, and the fact that it's 4 years out, I suspect you're gonna be in the 150 to 175 range.
I think if we were to go that route, and I think that makes good sense, we would probably need to establish a specific, like, account, like a another special
Right.
purpose stabilization account.
If you do that, then town meeting has to withdraw it,
Yeah,
which is a 2/3 vote.
That's
if I
right.
remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah, but I mean, the good news is if we plan it and fund it, we're very likely to spend it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
How are we on that abatement overlay fund? Is that pretty high or is it where they want it to be?
So, your overlay fund, I boosted this year, to a little over $220,000. You had a technical deficit, of, I forget the exact number. So let me back up for a moment. The way DOR looks at the overlay account is they look at the balance or the deficit that you had in any given year over the last, I believe it's 5 years. You had 1 year in which you gave out $1,450,000 in abatements. So from DOR's perspective, you were something on the order of 350,000, plus or minus, please don't hold me to the exact number. So I was uncomfortable with what you'd set aside this fiscal year for overlay and what was being looked at for next fiscal year. And I did increase local receipts a little bit, which gave me some room to increase the overlay a little bit. So I think, Chris, we're around 225 for the overlay this year. I'd have to look at the recap sheet. Now, that you can tap each fall for a little bit of something if you need it. I sort of look at it as the loose change in the couch cushions, if you will. And if you remember, we used 25,000 for the MART program, 20,000 for that, and then around 4,200, I think, for a late bill at the schools or something. But I'd like to see you keep that overlay up in the 225 to 250 range for the next few years.
When are abatements due?
Within 2 weeks of the bill, within
30 days.
30 days of the bill being received, so.
Of the
So like February,
of the
February 1st.
January bill, right? It's the final. It's when they
not the
The
final
actual-
bill,
the actual-
not the final bill.
the actual bill.
Right, but
Right.
the actual bill is in 2 quarters, it's when you
Right.
get both of them.
Yeah.
So it's when
the
you
first
get-
of those.
Right, before the you have until the Q1, the Q3 tax bill is due, that's when you have to abate,
Okay.
to file an abatement.
So we've got this overlay that we tapped into, but we don't really know what our abatement situation is until February
Well, I mean,
1st.
aside from the banner year with the tax debacle,
Right.
it always sat at about 120 to 150.
And if you're at 200, 225, you should be able to deal with any real hiccups.
Right.
Maybe you have a case at the appellate tax board and it's just been sitting there for 3-4 years. You don't know how that's gonna come out.
Yeah.
So if you're at 200 to 225 every year, I'd like to think you'll never have that kind of hiccup.
And overlay funds.
That wasn't a hiccup.
Overlay funds roll over, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Right, and then we increased our reserve account a lot this year, right? I think we went from like 50K to 200K. Did you account for that in free cash? We haven't really hit it on anything.
That wouldn't roll over in free cash until next year. And given,
But we could put it towards snow and ice and not have to deduct from free cash on that.
yes, I would not want to build my plan on that because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But as we get closer to town meeting, your risk decreases.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
No.
For you tonight?
Thank you, Carter.
Appreciate it.
Thank
You all
you.
see you tomorrow night.
You will.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a good
folks.
night.
All right. Okay, so for agenda items 6 and 7, I think we can kind of combine these. I have not received rankings from 3 of the 5 members, so I don't want to prejudice anybody's rankings at this point.
No, I have mine,
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna have
Okay.
a discussion and I would finalize
Oh,
it.
okay.
In case somebody
Yeah.
made some incredible,
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Daniel Webster oratory that changed my mind.
I'm gonna say, I have mine handy in the doc. I in process, we were sending them along.
I have mine handwritten, I don't have it in the.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
can get it to you
Yeah,
once.
however you wanna do it.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
I'm
got
not.
mine types.
See, we can take them anywhere. Yeah, I'm pretty flexible here. So, okay. So, what is the best way to proceed here? I think for starters, I could probably put the list on the screen. I'm just thinking out loud here, so bear with me. Maybe the way to come at this is to go through the list and have a discussion that is basically high, medium, and low for each item. And
Sure.
then we can bat that around at that level. Does that, I think for our purposes today, that's probably as close as we should get, given that we haven't done any calculus here. And then we can have a discussion about the calculus as well, by the way, because I think we've been putting off that discussion a little bit too. So let me figure out how to share my screen.
Some of my rankings may change based on the amount of money that's available. Because
That's a luxury that's hard to.
part of my thinking was just to, for example, if we don't have enough to fund a lot of stuff, I'm not gonna buy 2 police cruisers. So that kind of thing depended a little bit on how much we had to spend.
Right, well, we never know how much we're gonna have to spend. And it's, this is a discussion that happens every year, nor in my mind, and other people have different positions. In my mind, that's not what we're asked to do. We're asked to prioritize these items what would be the priority. So what you just said should be factored into your priority. That means they shouldn't be like 1 and 2, for instance.
Well, they're not.
Right, I don't know, I haven't
They're
seen
1 and
it.
23.
Yeah, okay, so that might be, so the chance of getting down to 23, historically, not very good. So getting halfway, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple items on my list. Although I have my priority based on kind of what I was anticipating our capital budget being. By the same token, there's items there that when Mr. Terenzini gave us this paper originally, and I went right to the bottom line and just went, oh, we only have 790,000. No, that's not correct. But my first thought was, ooh, I got items on mine that I would move to the back if that's where we are.
Right.
Because some items could eat up half of that budget without batting an eye. Whereas at 1.1, 1.2, I have a different opinion about what we could potentially fit in.
Sure. Well, again, the town manager will review that and can reorder things such that it fits the money better by changing things a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
we have discussed the fact in prior meetings in prior years that if the town manager takes something from number 22 and puts it up to 3, I'm gonna be more than distrustful of that move. But if they move something because of cost from 15 to 11, I'm like, okay, well, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's been the past practice. Now, what I will offer, just an additional data point, Rob, is that the analysis that we just got from the interim town manager is more information than we've gotten in my tenure, either as a finance
Oh.
committee member or a CPC member, at this point in the process, ever. So typically, this information lands in early February.
Okay.
So we actually do have a little bit more money, more information, not more money.
Right.
More information than we have had
Okay.
historically in this process, just because this is the way this town manager has chosen to do it, right? The previous town manager had a different philosophy when it came to these things. So, we can think of this in terms of $1.2 million, and it's not guaranteed. It could be less, it could be more, it could be, who knows, but it's something, right? It's a data point.
So, and then the other, I guess, big thing that sticks out for me though is the Ritter Delta is so much bigger than everything else. So, I mean, if we do that, we're not gonna be able to do much more. We're using cash for capital. We haven't used any other funding mechanisms for capital for a long time.
Oh, we have,
Is
we've
it-
used raise and appropriate.
Well, that's what I mean, but cash, we haven't borrowed,
We haven't borrowed.
No, we have not used any debt,
Right.
that is correct.
not for a long time, but we
Right.
used to.
Yeah,
And I think it's just a conversation to have when we've got something like the Ritter that's that big.
So a little bit additional context. As we speak, assuming the meeting is still going, the municipal building committee is meeting.
Yep,
And they are bringing forth, as was explained by their chair to the school committee 2 weeks ago, their intent is to bring forth a plan that includes this building, an annex that'll be attached to this building, and town hall
okay,
at the spring special town meeting.
yep,
And that would effectively be a debt exclusion project.
yep.
Somewhere in the vicinity of $15 million is the number that was estimated. Now
Being.
that could theoretically be grossed up to include this, this delta, or not.
Well, that's
right?
what I'm wondering, why, if the Ritter is gonna be part of this new plan, why are we doing this little piece?
well, again, then that's why it landed where it landed with me,
Yeah,
which was dead last.
okay,
Because number one, exactly for that reason. Number two, I'm not a big fan of, hey, it's December 2nd, let's get wildly crazy numbers that we've never seen before, and I have 2 weeks to make it, 2 meetings to make a decision. That ain't gonna happen.
yep. Okay,
Yeah, so that, I have a little bit different logic in terms of where I think it would land on my list, but
and just to.
but the logic is sound.
To round out the funding discussion, I don't know if we've ever used it, but there's a different mechanism besides raise and appropriate or debt. And that's a capital outlay exclusion.
Capital exclusion. We've done it once for the pavement management plan.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's how we did all the roads. That
Okay.
was a $4 million 5-year plan.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's basically a debt exclusion, right?
It's
But
not
it is a
debt,
debt
though.
exclusion.
Yeah, but it
It's a
goes.
finite debt
It's
exclusion.
not debt, it's capital. You raise and appropriate.
Well, it's debt in the fact that you're
It's-
paying.
yeah, it's over the
you're
levy
paying
limit.
for it and you're paying back. So you do the project and you collect the money and you pay
Over
it
a
back.
5-year period.
So there are what do they call bands that you actually use.
I don't think.
Bond anticipate.
It wasn't, yeah, it was short-term
If you
borrowing.
if you had to do borrowing for it, do that. But I think you can just vote a capital outlay
You
exclusion,
can.
raise extra cash,
Yeah, yeah.
and spend the cash
can.
with no borrowing.
You absolutely can do that.
Yeah.
In fact, I've not validated this with anybody from the town of Ashby, but Mr. Passios has told me on numerous occasions that that is how Ashby does their capital plan. Is they actually fund the entire thing through a capital exclusion.
Okay.
And it sits on top of the levy limit.
Right,
and they
if
just
that's
pay
what
it,
your
and then-
practice is,
Yeah.
but it's the equivalent of just raising the money. And
It
I'm
is,
assuming your
yeah.
capital exclusion is pretty similar every year. because-
Yeah, it would theoretically be pretty
Right.
level, but it gives them some form of elasticity, I guess, that
Yeah.
we don't have.
Mr. Chair, quick follow-up on something you said earlier, just for planning purposes as much as anything else. You mentioned doing things at spring special town meeting. I assumed you meant just normal town meeting.
Annual town meeting.
Okay, great. I just didn't know if we were anticipating 2 town
Oh, God, I hope
meetings
not.
in the spring, because, we could have a special town meeting.
No, I misspoke.
Okay, great, super.
I misspoke. Yeah. But yeah, that is the plan. That
yeah.
is developing for this building. So, okay, so let's go down the list, and we can just kind of take these in order, and I just get a consensus for the room. So, the first 2 are the same, patrol cruiser and patrol cruiser. I listed these as high priority.
I had them both at high.
I had one as high and one as low.
I have one high and one medium.
Okay.
I'm doing mine, I graded them numerically,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna do
Yeah,
1
yeah,
to
just
10 is
bracket 'em.
high, 11 to 20.
Yeah, just bracket them.
Yep.
Yeah. I think just for
So, yeah.
purposes of
So I
discussion.
have high and
yeah,
medium.
Okay.
And I think, Chris,
I had them both high.
Okay. Any discussion on those? I totally get the logic of splitting them. Makes sense to me. Especially when there's limited funds. Okay, public safety building, second floor design, $42,000. This would be the build out for
yep, the extra office.
office space in the second floor unfinished area. I put this as low.
Medium.
I put it high.
I had it as high.
I had it as medium.
My thinking on this was, we are needing to focus our efforts certainly on facilities in the coming year. Back to the debt exclusion proposal in this building, and I do think we need to take care of our people and make sure that they have adequate workspace. I'm not sure that we should be running these projects in tandem. I think we should prioritize one and then do it and then do the other. That was my logic. Not to say we don't need it, I think we do. Senior center parking. I put this as medium.
Me too.
I have it as low.
That hit me as high.
I was leaning to high, actually. Chris?
So I had this in the middle, but I think I would have this really high if someone came in with an overhead picture of that area and said, we're gonna put it here, and the stuff that's there, we wanna move somewhere else. So I think it's needed, I just don't understand at all the plan behind it.
And for those exact reasons, that's why I have it as low. It's like, again, the design should be, hey, I have an idea of what I want, and I just need the design to do it. But if you don't even know what you want to begin with, and I agree with you, Chris, I don't get a sense that anybody does, then it's low.
I was hoping through a discussion we had, someone could go sit with the Council on Aging and develop that plan. And I think it involves moving,
Kids Kingdom.
Yeah.
yeah.
We didn't really come to, I was thinking we had come to more of a solution on that, and you're right, we haven't.
Yeah, I mean, it's my third year now doing this, and we've gotten no further than we were 2 years ago when we were in this discussion, right?
And in fact, we actually went back because the plan they come up with now would be impossible because of the patio and the
Yeah.
bocce court and everything they put in there, that would not even work. So it's really completely back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
I like my ranking on it less by the minute.
I mean, so here's the problem.
There's no right and wrong. in
Yeah,
this.
no,
They're coming from different
but I
perspectives.
do think it's worth kind of hearing each other out on this. Here's the problem on this. Number one, it's a safety concern, right? Like, we're encouraging people to use this facility, people who are in a certain age bracket, and we're having them move from point A to point B across space that is sometimes not safe, sometimes really unsafe. And to whatever extent we can get level parking in closer proximity to that building, I think we want to do, you know? So I understand the process and procedure problems we've run into here, but at the end of the day, the goal line here is really important in my mind, you know?
And to some extent, any parking in the center of town is a good thing because there's no parking in the center of town.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that particular facility is it's just the proximity. I'm not sure, you know, during the day, I think that there, more often than not, you can find a place to park in town, right? And you know, our bylaws allow for us to put in business and have parking quite a ways away from that
Yes.
business, right? Like, that's all, and in most cases, I don't think that you really require a long walk to get to where you're going in the center of town. The problem is that building and its clientele need closer proximity, right? You know, like that, therein lies the problem in my mind. And it's not safe. And you know, as a school committee member, I've said it every time we have this conversation, I do worry about encroachment on the school campus. And I don't think that is, you know, back to not having a fully thought out plan here. That is a problem and has not been resolved. So I've got it as medium because I think it's important, but I definitely see the problems. All right, town hall HVAC. I put this as low because of the same issue that I have with the library, with the Ritter building stuff, which is I think that this could potentially get worked into a town hall project at this point.
I put it as high only because people who work in that building have been working in horrible conditions for way too long, although I totally acknowledge your reasoning for yours, and I could look at it the same way, so it's, again, yeah.
I had it high.
I had it at the high end of
High
medium.
as,
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
well, I had it high as well.
Yeah, I was medium high effectively. Don't know where to draw that line exactly, but
Yep.
I guess my reason is I see no scenario in which town hall is not renovated.
Yep.
So let's just start moving on it.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one part of we're gonna replace the HVAC one way or another, and we're gonna pay for it. So it's a matter of what pocket are we paying for it, right? Like, so that's a fair point. Okay, library HVAC. I had this as
High.
high.
Yep. One of the most used buildings in
Yep.
town, so,
Yep.
by
And
everybody.
that's my thinking as well, is we're not looking at a renovation of that building, and it's a heavily used building, and this is about services for people.
Yep. Similar.
Nope, that was the same.
Town hall windows. I had this as a low, back to my earlier reasoning.
I had this as low as well, just because of the price tag.
I have it as a cusp between high and medium.
Yeah, mine was in medium.
I had it high as well for the same reason. Let's start moving on town hall.
And I like the idea, as I think more, I like the idea of moving on construction projects, just to echo what Mr. Terrazini said earlier, because discussing with builders in the past few weeks, this has been the refrain time and again, is what used to cost you $100,000 to build is now costing you $300,000 to build. So there's something to be said about moving on construction projects, because waiting for funding means it's going to waiting for a whole project with a loan is going to cost potentially, not just interest wise, but you're looking at more money just for materials alone.
Yep.
Okay. Teen center flooring. I had it as a medium to high,
That's where I have it too.
just because of the use
High, medium.
and wanting to maintain that building, which is a fairly new
Again, it
building.
gets a ton of use.
You know,
I had mine on the lower end of medium, and I want it higher. I think it's going to move up in my final thing. I was probably being overly cautious because I'm aware that I have a child who spends an awful lot of time in that building, and it's easy to look at it and go, well, of course this is important.
Overcompensated.
Yeah,
that building does get used.
Oh my
a
God.
lot.
Chris?
I have it as a medium.
COA flooring, I have as a high to medium or a low high. And my thinking on this was, although I do think there are aesthetics aspects of this, we have a very nice building there now that has great aesthetics to it. when I see buckling in carpeting around elderly people, it scares me. So I view this as a safety issue, more so than really anything else.
I have it as a medium.
Yeah, medium.
I've got it as high.
I have it as high, one of my highest.
And any other pertinent points there other than what I just articulated?
Well, that and we seem to pass over the Council on Aging frequently on money, so
Yeah, that's a fair point too. Yeah.
I'm much more apt to vote for the Council on Aging than putting money towards the teen center.
Okay. All right. McNally Park Survey and Design. I had this as a low.
As do I.
Low.
I think it's admirable, but I don't see a pressing need to do this now.
Yep.
I have it as low as well.
Marshall Pond weed treatment. I also had it as low for the same reasons.
Yep, me too.
I have it as high.
You do? Okay.
Yep.
Chris, you want to?
We're gonna lose the permit. Let's start using, let's start treating that pond and get it back in use.
I've been wondering I don't know if it makes more sense to go gung-ho and do this because the rest of the park project is potentially getting delayed with issues, or if it makes more sense to think that could get rolled into the rest of the park at some point. I have no clue how I feel on that, and I wish I knew more about everything else going on in that project to have a clue.
Yeah, I kind of share your. I don't want to call it a frustration. I just feel like I don't know enough on this one. Not specific to this project, but the broader. Marshall Park has become a very confusing matter.
Yeah.
So here I come from. This is where I get to play my townie role, and Rob can play this too. I ice skated on that park a lot as a little kid, on that pond a lot as a little kid, and it was very active in the winter, and there was hockey going on in there like crazy in the winter, and the few years that it has frozen out there, it's been sort of impeded by vegetation that kind of lives above the water line. I don't know if my nostalgia, I kind of wrestle with that because honestly I don't know, even if it was a pristine sheet of ice, would it get the kind of use that it was getting in 1978 when I was skating on it at 5 years old, right? I just don't. I'm somewhat doubtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with your thinking on this, man. It's Marshall Pond has seemingly, instead of gotten closer to be a realization, it's gotten further away over the last couple of years, which is unfortunate. And I think that money could be put to the actual renovation of the park itself, which has plans. I'm not against the project. I just, again, it's a ranking. I think that money could be used toward the park itself.
Yeah. I want parking on Chestnut Street, and I want to be able to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean?
It's a little thing.
You're so picky.
When I think of Marshall Park, that's what I think of. Okay, Ritter Building upgrades. Well, we've kind of beat this. This is the one that has a missing number, so we can put the 710 in there for a placeholder now.
I had it medium to low.
Low.
Yeah, this one almost wins the limbo competition for me.
Yes. Mine is close. It's close for me as well. There are a couple of things.
And that was in part because we didn't know the number, but knowing the number now, I can't say I feel better.
Right.
Okay. I had it as low. not gonna beat it to death. 6-wheel dump spreader plow. I actually had this one as low. And my reasoning on it is, we got a bunch of brand new dumps coming in.
Yeah.
And we don't, to my knowledge, have a personnel plan to staff these trucks. At least that was not explained to me adequately. So, I think we are, for a little while, gonna be a lot better than we've been. But not perfect, but we're not perfect in a lot of places, and that was just kind of my logic.
Yeah, I had it loaded, my comments, because I had the same exact comments in my sheet, in case I wasn't here tonight.
Yep.
I had it high. I hadn't really considered the incoming dumps in the personnel plan. Mine was, a lot of my logic was, well, DPW has it as number one. If it's that important, it's gonna supplant a whole bunch of other things, but if it's that level of important, then we need it, and if it's long-term cost savings, so much the better.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry, no.
No, see, but just, the personnel point sticks with me, because I don't see a point in funding something that may not get used, and I'm not, like, to its best capacity. And I'm not keen on funding something in a way that forces a personnel shift for it to get used.
Nor am I.
I had it as high, there were a number of vehicles that the DPW was requesting. I picked one for high priority, and that was this one. The others, I had far less priority.
On mine, I did have one for high, and it wasn't this one, but this one was middle. It's almost the dead middle of my list. However, the employee plan to running them is not what gets in my way, because it's kind of chicken and the egg. We don't have the employee who runs the truck, blah, blah, blah. We can hire. The real problem is that because of the backlog of trucks we have, as Carter alluded to when he spoke, is that we're gonna be in a position where in 15 years, we're gonna have 3 of these or 4 of these all be of the same age. And maybe this isn't the time to put another one like us, because now I think the supply chain is shortening up, so then we get another one that gets close to this one. So I think spreading them out, let's get the 3 or 4 that we're gonna be getting, and let's get them in, and not put another one on the list, so that's why, it may even go lower for me.
Yeah. Okay. Compact backhoe. I have this as medium. This is, I think predominantly the intent here is for the cemetery. I get the use case, and I also get the fact that you can't really schedule the need for this machine relative to when you have the other backhoe
Right.
digging ditches for big projects that we also theoretically would like to fund.
And it's too big, as he said, I mean, it's too big
Yeah,
to
and it's
maneuver
gonna eat
around.
up gravestones and those kinds of things. So, now, that being said, shovels work too. So,
Unless you're doing a Shakespeare play, shovels don't work.
Hey, I watched all 15 seasons of Supernatural, and I can guarantee you can clearly dig a full grave in about an hour, according to that show. So I see no
Yeah, if
issue.
you have somebody doing that every day, and it's the spring or summer, you go out there and late now, and then try to go dig something.
Oh, that's,
anyway, but I did have it as me. I think this is
I have it as a low high. It's the
I
lower
had
low
it
high.
as low. I thought there was some discussion about renting one when you needed one.
I think that's. I don't know. I don't recall that specifically.
I recall that
Yeah.
for one of those vehicles,
Yeah.
but maybe that wasn't the one.
I don't think it was, to be honest with you.
Say again, Chris?
I don't think it was that one that he said he could rent.
Yeah, I mean, we are
Probably could.
renting a loader, which I know that came up in the
Oh,
conversation,
maybe that was it.
which is considerably larger.
I had it medium.
I had that kind of on the the medium, but more on the higher side of the medium.
And mine was lower, but I originally had my dump trucks higher, and so I was kind of like, great, you get your big
Yeah.
toy, and I get the need for it, but
Yep.
that's an awful lot of budget in one place.
Well, that's the other thing is like 400,000
Right.
versus 100,000.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Yep.
Versus, and needing clearly to invest in DPW equipment. So,
Yep.
and the other thing too is that we don't have, large infra projects for DPW this year because of the other funding sources that have gone into infra projects. So my thinking was spend a little bit of money on DPW equipment this year because
Yep.
we're going to be spending on infra in out years. So, anyway, 1 ton truck utility body plow. I had this as a medium to high. The DPW just needs trucks, and their fleet is aging. And I don't think that we should let that fleet deteriorate to the point that the big trucks deteriorated on us.
But I had it as medium.
Medium.
That was low.
Low.
Any other thoughts?
A lot of these would, if I decide to move my 6-wheel dump lower, and I don't know if I'm going to yet, like as I chew things through. If I do, then several of my DPW are going to move up in priority because,
Yeah, fair enough.
and again, I'm looking at saying, well, if you say this is number one priority, okay, but it's like, not to infantilize the DPW director at all, but it's like when the kid asks for a video game system for Christmas. Okay, but that's your
That's your gift.
that's your thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's why this 1 ton truck was a low, because the next one I made a medium.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the catch basin cleaning truck. So I had this as a low,
I did too.
and my reasoning on this was a couple of issues. Number one is I don't really understand the plan for catch basins, either between what we're doing now or what we would do when we got the truck and how much better it would be. Like that contrast in my mind, we haven't
This struck me. as-
really drawn.
This would be nice to have. And but it's a nice to have.
Well,
It's not needed.
we gotta clean catch basins,
Right.
and we have a vehicle that does it, and the vehicle is aging, and it's
Right.
it's
And there's been a lot
kind of a
last 2
hodgepodge
years.
Frankenstein vehicle
And
actually.
it's big, he said,
Yep.
it's not, and I mean, and it's been a big, people have been very vocal about not getting the catch basins cleaned and.
But I don't think it's the vehicle that is
Well,
slowing
I
us
mean-
down.
I agree. I thought my understanding was the current truck is not out there. Look, to meet our needs, we need I'd have to go back and check notes, but my understanding is we kind of would need that vehicle operating every day for that purpose, nearly full time.
Well, in some
No.
months,
No?
No, I think this is the one we talked about, that 3 towns could go together and share services even in the months that you can't do catch basins.
Oh, I'd have to go.
It would be used like only a couple months of the year.
if it was used steadily.
Yeah, if it was used steadily. So I think we should outsource this. I don't think we should be in the catch basin truck procuring business. Well, we should regionalize it or something, but it's a lot of money for something that isn't used all that often on the rotation that we have on catch basins.
So the other thing here is, and the other issue that's been in my mind on this one is, I think this relates to this conversation around this stormwater utility idea and a future plan that could potentially be a funding source for this sort of thing. I mean, obviously, most of those funds would go to infrastructure, but I think that's an idea that needs to get developed. And I would be supportive of. The problem is that ultimately it's, you call it an impervious surface fee, but it's a tax and it's gonna be hard to sell, so.
Yeah, we need it. I don't know if we're gonna be able to sell it.
Anyway, any other thoughts on catch basin cleaning truck? Okay. North Cemetery expansion area prep. I put this as high. People are dying to get in there.
But I have it as a high medium.
Did I miss?
I have it as low.
I have it as low too, I have it as the lowest.
Really?
Did I have my understanding, maybe I'm just out to lunch on this. I thought that the cemetery had money to do this.
Not that I'm aware.
I think they do.
I mean, they have money, and I don't know whether they can be appropriated to this, but it is a valid DPW department and is a valid request.
I thought there was some discussion that the cemetery commission controlled some money that could be used for this purpose, or am I making?
There was. Chris, you know a little bit more about this than I do. You wanna?
No, I think I recall, just like Rob did, that we had that discussion. They have that perpetual money that could be used for this. And there's also the whole question about what's the inventory in the North Cemetery, and they don't even have the answer on that.
Okay.
So for those two reasons, I also had it very low.
I'm medium low, basically for the reasons everyone said. I am not leaving these discussions that have been happening over the past couple of years particularly impressed with the management of our cemeteries. But by the same token, we're not out of space yet, but only two things are certain, so.
And one is gonna need the other. One is gonna need to help on the other.
So, I did not capture this during our last meeting as an item of a question, and therefore I did not forward the question. It did come up in our conversation with Bill. I agree, we didn't get an answer. There was discussion about the cemetery commission had not met. They did meet,
Yeah,
I
they
think
did.
last week or the week before.
A
I don't know
couple
if this
weeks ago.
came up in their meeting. I have no idea. I could forward a question to Bill and the commission chair for the cemeteries just to see if there, if there is a stated intent around their revolving accounts to fund this, and forward you
It
guys
says on
whatever
his,
answer.
I'm looking at his PowerPoint, and on his notes to this, it says funds from the cemetery sale of lots, so not the perpetual fund, but funds from the cemetery sale of lots could be used for this work too. I don't know how much they have in that fund, but, that, some of it could be used to do that as
Okay.
well.
Anyway, I will ask the question and distribute an answer, if I get one, ahead of our next meeting. North Cemetery Roads repaving. I had this as low.
I have it as very low, yes.
I had it as technically medium, but it's on the cusp of low.
I have it as low. I can't envision spending, with no unkindness meant, I can't envision spending that much money right now on paved paths surrounding dead people. Like,
I'm gonna dress it up a little better.
I think our cemeteries are important, but I look at this and go, we have so many safety and infrastructure concerns that can directly get in the way of people in town being able to live their lives, or could injure them if we don't take care of them.
Well, at some point, it becomes a safety issue. I haven't been down there to see how much disrepair
Not
is
that
in. So,
It's,
yeah.
it's not like it's just been paved, but it's not, incredibly pockmarked like it's falling apart. I mean, there are some places that are better than others, obviously, and certainly the frost and thaw cycles have affected it, but I've ridden my bike there and it's, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I generally agree with your assessment. That was my logic on this. I think we should be prioritizing services for people who are alive.
If I could ask that cemetery in all of its locations here be spelled with an E-R-Y?
Did I misspell it?
Yes. So,
I
if it wasn't-
think I might have cut and pasted it, but
That's okay.
that's interesting. All right, yeah. I will fix that.
Good thing you're not on the school committee.
You better believe it.
It's a grave situation.
Ooh, love it.
Very good.
More Shakespeare, I'm telling you. He's a very literate bunch here.
All right. Primary school feasibility study for entrance and driveway. I have as a high.
I have
Hi.
as a high.
Chris?
I have it as high.
I'm sorry, say again, Chris?
I have it as high.
Okay. And I also have a high for the playground equipment design
Me too.
services.
And I have that as a low.
Okay.
That was a lower high. It's within my high, but it's really on the low end of the high.
The low end of the high. Okay. Chris?
So I have that as high, and one thing just worth noting is that we have no inclusive playgrounds in town. So hopefully this isn't totally inclusive, not ADA compliant and inclusive. And it would be now the only one in town. There was supposed to be one going into Marshall, but, and that is used not only during the school day, but, after school as well, over the summer and stuff, so.
So in addition to that,
I think there's some,
my thinking is that these two go together, right?
me too.
They should be done together because you don't want to limit your options for your entrance and driveway based on where the existing playground is.
Oh, that's a good point.
And you don't necessarily want to place your new playground where a potential new driveway or parking lot might go, right? So because you're dealing with the use of the footprint around that building, I think that they really kind of go together and they need to be funded together.
They didn't get presented that way, and if they did, I would understand that.
Yeah, they were a little bit.
Well,
I
they're
think the point
totally
was,
separate line items, otherwise you would just put it together. It's like, listen, these are both contingent on each other, they rely on each other, and
but the reasoning that the superintendent, I think she articulated when she came here, and that was certainly the reasoning that was discussed amongst the school committee members, was very much related to this, was that the reason why we prioritize them 1 and 2 is because we think they need to go together. Because for
usually when things want to go together, you would make them 1 and 1.
well, they're different,
The same
but
thing.
they're different things.
Well, then,
right?
But you're saying that one absolutely relies on the other, so then they're kind of conjoined.
Well, no, because you would have the same work product if you conjoin them, right? So, for example, if you would potentially go to the same firm to do the work, which they're completely different areas of expertise, and then when you went to actually fund the project, there is still some separation, right? So you could
Yeah,
say,
but this isn't for funding the project, this is
Correct.
the zone, so.
Correct.
So, anyway, maybe we're just
yeah, we're
highlighting
Can
emphasis
they-
for no reason.
Can they be handled as one if they're funded separately? Here? I mean, so like, because I hear like, well, you need different expertise. Well, sure, but then how do we guarantee 2 lowest bidders communicate with each other?
that's
Or-
a good question.
Or are we just,
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think that the intent here would be that we would write the bid in such a way that they are 2 sides of the same coin, and they do require some collaboration. Or we do the entrance and driveway first. We spec out a reasonable amount of space for a playground on the plot plan, and then we design the playground
Right.
based on that available
Which is
space.
how I took it.
And then you fund both projects,
Right,
right?
that's how
Like,
I took
Which is I mean, I get it.
Right.
Because, but the point being is we don't wanna limit the entrance and driveway based on any preconceived notion of either where this thing is
Mm-hmm.
today or where it should go. Because my top priority is actually not the playground, it's getting vehicles in and out of that building safely, you know?
Which is, exactly. Which is why I made one high and one low.
That's fair,
Yep.
I get it. But I would also ask you to reconsider and think of it.
I have a question
Yes,
mark,
but-
I have listened.
All right, THES hot water tank, I have as a medium to high.
Yeah, me too.
I have a high.
And my logic on that is
It's
that
the last
when
one.
it goes, we're gonna pay for it anyway. And I'd rather have a plan to pay for it, cause it's gonna go sooner or later.
Yep.
Yep. And, yeah.
And we gotta have it, like, it's not, this isn't
Yeah.
one of those like,
Yeah.
oh, it broke, we're gonna wait till next fiscal to fix it, we don't have that
It's
luxury.
what it is, it's where it is,
Where-
and it's how
where-
much it costs,
Yeah.
all to make it a high.
Where does the dollar figure come from? I don't remember.
This was an estimate from somebody who does industrial plumbing.
Cause I noticed that it's just on the cusp of our
Yeah, it's really, it's right
our
there.
criteria,
Right.
so if it was $19,000, it wouldn't be here.
Right, but my guess is it's not gonna be $19,000.
Probably not. Probably not. Although we don't, and I don't know exactly what the
I
logic.
guess what I'm saying is, should that be part of the school budget and not part of the capital plan?
No, it's just made it, right, so it's the bottom rung of what is eligible, and I hear you.
Yep, and that's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point. Primary school generator, I ranked as medium. My thought on that was recognizing the priority on that for the schools. The cost is what affected my thinking on that, which is it's a lot more than what I thought at the time that the school committee considered it. I think I explained to you guys that the school committee did reconsider that and re-articulated the prioritization. So despite the additional cost, left it as their number 4 priority.
I have it as high.
I have it as medium.
I have it on as medium, really the lower end of medium, which I don't like, but that cost increase really threw me.
Yeah.
I'm the same, the lower end of medium.
Okay, primary school window safety film. So this is the one that we are not going to take off. I ranked this one as high, for the exact same reason that I ranked it as high for the last 2 years.
Which is the same reason I ranked it as low.
Yep, so it's low for me for the same reason.
We keep,
And
soon they'll all be done, and we won't have this
it's
discussion again.
medium for me because I haven't been here.
I know that the school threw in that there's some official government agency says window films usually pay for themselves in 3 years.
Well, that was taken out of the presentation this year.
That was in the presentation this year.
The logic around the solar value, I believe we took out.
I checked this year's present, and it was like paid for within 3. It was like it was a doubling down
There's
from
a solar
previous years,
value. Okay.
and that's fine. But I was trying to imagine saving $8-9 grand a year in savings from the window film, and I maybe I don't understand the heating costs, but that felt like a stretch.
Well, it's heating and air conditioning as well.
Sure.
So I need to now go back and look because it was part of our discussion was the prioritization here is a safety item for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
First and foremost. And I, the the environmental value and the cost savings associated with heat and air conditioning, although we do have quite a bit of air conditioning in that building now, is negligible to me. This is a safety issue for me. And we will, in fairly short order, have safety film in Turkey Hill and the middle high school and not in the primary school.
I have it as low. I still think all three are a waste of money.
Okay. Replacement of security camera central server. I have this as a medium to high.
That's what I have it upper medium, yeah.
Medium.
I think this is something we just gotta do.
Yep.
Chris?
Yeah, I was medium on this one as well. Well, on the lower end of medium.
Okay.
Only because others were
I'm sorry,
had
say
risen above. Only because others have risen above it for
Yeah.
reasons we've discussed.
Yeah. So aside from the fact that we need to be able to run security cameras, which we are running, and the server is operational, it is not supported. And that's, I couldn't tell you when the thing is not gonna function. But I can tell you that the longer it is not supported, the more likely we are gonna run into a security issue associated with that machine. And we've done a really good job in the school department around patching and replacing unsupported hardware and dealing with security issues. And this is a security issue all around. So, any additional thoughts on that? Okay, LMHS window safety film we are taking off. We are also taking off the utility pickup fire truck with plow. Fire prevention duty officer vehicle, I have as a medium to high. I just think that we need to make sure that we have reliable vehicles in the fleet there.
I had that as high.
I had it as the cusp of high.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I had it high.
Higher than
I have it as medium.
Higher than what?
higher than your cruiser that you had high?
No, right before the second cruiser.
Okay.
And, part of my logic, and I'm sure it entered into everybody else's, is also the distribution of money to the different departments. I mean, I
Yeah.
want to make sure that people look at this and don't feel like, oh, all the money went here or there, and try to allocate everybody's needs and.
Which is great when we do it as individuals, and then what tends to happen is when we bring them together and we run an average or a mean, we then have to kind of look at it, and maybe next meeting we'll say, okay, we need to smooth this out a little bit, because
Right.
they can bunch.
Well, that's good, I mean, but that's, the fact that each one, first of all, I didn't, aside from the safety film, I didn't see any wild discrepancy between anybody's, we're all kind of.
And that one has a history.
Yeah, it's a-
Yeah.
I've been here for them, and I understand, I mean, Matt's been here.
Yep.
Chris has been here for.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I think the one action item that I have is to chase down the issue around the funding source for the cemetery expansion area. And I will follow up on that, because I did not capture that previously. Okay, my ask would be that everybody following this conversation, it's not even necessary to give me what you did for today's, because it's, at this point, I think everybody's gonna make adjustments, I certainly am. Send me, we'll have a discussion around the next meeting and a deadline for submitting these. My ask would be, when you fill out your column, check your list and check it twice, that you have, whatever the number is, I think we'll have 21 when it's all said and done.
No, that's
25.
25.
Okay, we'll have 25.
Yep.
That you have 1 to 25.
Right.
And that you don't skip any numbers, and you don't do any
Yeah, 'cause
numbers twice.
I just saw that I skipped number 19.
It's happened each of the last 2 years anyway.
I had
I've
two
done this.
22s.
And it's, when you don't realize it, and then you get to the final meeting where we're looking to get this thing done, and it's like,
Yep.
it's problematic. So please check it twice before you send it to me, and then I will do what we need to do with it to bring to our next meeting a tentative final list, a calculated list. Speaking of which, we have an unresolved item around, are we going to calculate this based on average or mean?
No, average or median.
Median, I'm sorry.
Mean and average are the same, yeah.
Yep, yep.
For
And-
us English majors in the room, you wanna tell me?
Yes.
So,
This is
so this is
very-
an example. So a median is the middle point of all the data points. So for each one of these items, there's 5 data points. And there'll be a number that's in the middle, is equal number of higher and lower. The average is what you will probably already think of it as, which is you add everybody's score up together, you divide by 5, and that's the number. Now, median is designed to eliminate real outliers. If somebody marks something really high or really low compared to everybody else, it really skews the number. Whereas, let's say we have 25. If 4 people mark something 20 and one person marks person 1, that changes the average way higher. That'll be 81 divided by 5, which would be like a 15, 16 or something.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was median, it would be 20. That means 4 people put it at 20, that's where the median would be. And the outlier would be it's more smoothed out. That's the design of it.
So the flip side of that argument, so in practice, if you took something as 1, you took something as 1, you took something as 2, and Chris and I both put that item as dead last, the median is 2,
Right.
right? So not quite that extreme, but almost. Last year we had an item that fell into a similar category, right?
So what have we done historically?
We've done, well, last year we did
Average.
average.
Yeah.
So last year we had a pretty sizable disagreement around a couple items, but one in particular was the loader that the DPW proposed, and we talked a little bit about it when Bill was here. The other members ranked it, I think, in the top third, and Chris and I put it dead last, or one of us put it last, one of us put it second to last. For the reasons that I articulated when we met with Bill, right? It's not a, we've beaten that issue to death.
Right.
Nonetheless, it fell below the line because of the weight, the voting weight of Chris and I putting it last and second to last. So the argument to be made is that everybody has equal pull with their votes, right? So I see an argument on both sides.
So
Because I don't think a single outlier is going to be all that substantial, but when you have 2 votes, you do kind of have the ability to, the minority does get a certain amount of voting.
We're gonna go item by item, ranking each one.
Yes. You see the spreadsheet that Peter
Yes.
put out, and you have your column, so everybody's gonna put
Yes.
in 1 to 25 on their column, and he's gonna put a formula at the end.
I was and we can certainly do that. I was envisioning a completely different product where we might do something like that to see what it looks like. But then we have a discussion and we finalize a list which the committee then votes on up or down.
We will also do that.
We have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
We will also do that.
But that,
Yes, but the step
but
to
the
get
average or the
there.
median is going to give us a starting point for that discussion.
Yeah, yes,
Okay. Okay.
indeed.
So medians don't really work too well statistically on low sample sizes for, the reason that Peter described. It's not really outliers that you have with 5 informed members. It's, it's disagreements amongst 5 equally weighed members. So I'm kind of in favor of mean as being our critical, critical point or critical metric. I mean, if you want to calculate a median, that's fine. If you want to go from modes, you could do that as well, I guess.
Everybody's looking for modes, but I mean, again, I come down on one side, but it's really at the 51% mark on the other side. I'm not going to put up. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, there's argument. You're right. Both of you are right that there are arguments to be made on both sides, and there's no line in the sand as far as I'm
Would it
concerned.
be a pain in the ass to calculate both?
No, not at all.
It's absolutely simple.
Not at all. It's like
Yes,
literally
it's a
an extra
spreadsheet
cell in the
form.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we can bring that as a data point. We
Yeah.
can say like, look, we're gonna start with a mean, and we will look at the median and see what is, and see where that lands.
Right.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we can do that too.
Yep.
Yeah,
There you go. The way to make the decision is we're not going to make a decision. Do both. There you go.
I would just, I would
After 6
again,
years of doing this stuff in town government, I'm beaten down. Yeah.
I would again echo Chris's point, because I was gonna make the same one, that we're discussing statistics for a sample set of 5.
Right.
So, breaks down, everything breaks down to a certain extent, but more philosophically, if 2 of you put something last, well, and 3 of us have it first, it really shouldn't be high, because it should be more towards the middle of the pack, because we're not 150, 1,000, where a handful of outliers could skew it, but smaller.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. But I don't have a problem with seeing both sets of data.
Alright.
I would prefer we use the mean as our
Starter.
as the point from which we work for the discussion, with the median being another data point to influence that discussion, in my mind, but,
Sure.
I'm down with that. All right, that makes good sense to me. And I share your logic and Chris's, and that's where I lean, but like Tom, it's 51, 49, it's not. I'm not gonna live or die on it, so. All right. Let me go back to my agenda. Scheduling and topics for upcoming meetings. So, this is actually a 2-part item. The first is, when are we gonna meet next? To finalize our work product for the
Is
board.
December 18th the date that you had floated out there?
So I had floated either the 2 weeks from today, which would be the 16th, or the 18th, but the 18th is actually going to be a school committee meeting that night.
Okay.
So the 16th is, would be my preferred date, if we can make that happen.
Make either.
that's
Fine.
great for me.
Yeah.
Chris, is that all right with you?
Yeah, because 4/5 of us are on the other committee, when we meet on the 11th and 12th,
Yes.
Yeah.
and do we have a follow-on meeting with that for?
No, I think the goal is that on the 12th,
We're gonna
we're
vote
gonna
it
have
out
a
on the
longer
12th.
meeting and evaluate which ones we wanna choose to
Okay.
submit.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I just need to get a FinCom meeting in at some point this quarter, and I'm probably targeting the 19th. Because you stole the 12th. Well, not you, but
The other,
Tim.
Yep. Yep. Okay. All right. So we'll book for the 16th. Can y'all do 6:30 on the 16th, or is 7
6:30 is good for me.
preferable?
that's fine,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And I will book that and post it. The second portion is topics for meetings. I don't have proposed dates for the spring. But I do have a running list of topics that we could potentially start to flesh out in terms of things that we want to look at for themes of a potential report out for a 5-year plan. And I would ask you to consider these and then perhaps bring additional topics that we might want to flesh out to our next meeting. And then we can either divide, conquer, however we choose to do it. So first of all, obviously there needs to be some calculus around all of the items in the 5-year plan. And I think we need to determine like, is there a consensus amongst us, like, this thing ain't happening? Like, let's stop the madness and not plan to do this. So like, you know, some sort of consensus around, we should not do these things that are not going to get support. So that, I don't envision us telling anybody what to do, but reporting out like this does not have support, and take that for what it's worth. Second is ideally harmonizing our list of asks with a fiscal forecast from the town manager or interim town manager, whomever it is, and then potentially look at different funding paths to deal with the delta. So that would be, for example, offloading the infrastructure projects and recommending the town meeting take a hard look at a stormwater utility or other ways of doing these things that are not landing on the capital plan and our traditional ways of funding. And then the third thing that I had down is I think that we need to put some extra time and energy into fire trucks. And potentially DPW equipment as well, but definitely fire trucks. And the issue that was raised by the fire chief is that there are federal grants that are available to fund a substantial portion of these $1 million to $1.5 million fire trucks, but they're predicated upon the average life of the fleet of those particular class of vehicles at over 20 years. And so the question is can we manage our fleet to be able to qualify for grants that we currently wouldn't qualify for with the capital plan being the way it is, or the long-term capital plan being the way it is. I don't know if that's even in the realm of possibility, but given that we're talking about potentially $1 million savings times 3 or 4 trucks over the course of the next decade, I think that's potentially something that we should look at and maybe put a subcommittee or study around, or maybe even bring in some professional expertise to help us evaluate those vehicles and their lifespans.
I would need a deeper understanding of this topic to feel. I think we can get there,
I
but
think we'd have to involve our fire chief.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have no background in, could we age our fleet so that it becomes really old and therefore we look pathetic so that we would, could get grant money? That's what the game is. Hey, make it look like you're helpless and you're struggling. But do we want to really protect the town with 20-year-old equipment is really the question.
I think it's a fair question, but I think you get it out onto a spreadsheet. You get it out onto a spreadsheet. You look at what that actually means. You think about, what is the condition of the vehicles that we have that are nearing 75% of that time horizon, and you have an expert say yes, no, it's feasible. You're crazy. You're playing with fire, so to speak. But I think it's a 20-year-old vehicle. It has to be replaced. In that time horizon, just because. When you're looking at potentially millions of dollars in savings, I just in my mind I think it needs a little bit more proactive analysis.
Well, to get the opportunity.
So we should look at,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
oh, sorry, so the, we still have like 50 grand in that grant line item. And one of the reasons I thought it was wise to do that was to bring in some maybe grant consultants, if they exist, to help us work through this problem, to take a look at our 5-year plan, our 10-year plan, and say, this is how you should structure it so that you can start to maximize grant opportunities.
Right.
Because it wasn't only about writing the grants, it was about helping us maximize grants.
So anyway, and there are potentially other places that we could do that kind of project. It struck me over the course of the conversation with Chief Sullivan, like I don't think we should just take it on face value that we need to replace a vehicle when it enters that time horizon, because we have vehicles in the fleet that are substantially older than that. They're lower density items and lower frequency use
Yeah.
items, but we have vehicles in that fleet that are damn near as old as I am.
Well, since the topic is to discuss the topics, I'm not against speaking about the topic, I won't go into depth here, the only thing I would say is I wanna avoid us as a committee, none of us who have any fire experience, to have that without proper other expertise.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I wouldn't even say like, this isn't anything we need to resolve by May, it's just like a potential
Right,
area that we
no,
could
I hear you.
say,
I hear
hey,
you.
let's go chase this and report it out in an out year or whatever,
Yep.
right? But this is a
Yep.
potential area. And then the last item is estimates. And, can we potentially come up with some kind of guideline or proposed policy or something that we can help to solve this
Right.
estimate problem?
Well, I think the points that Carter brought out tonight were some that I had been thinking about already, which is, hey, I know somebody who's in this field, they'll give me an estimate for low or no cost, and you wind up getting something that, is just, if you did it
Here's
yourself.
what you pay for.
Right, exactly. You get something wildly different because, I would have done it differently, but we have to pay prevailing wage, and then all of a sudden, so then you get a realistic estimate. That's what I keep feeling that we're getting.
I agree, but I'm not sure that we're done. So as he was saying that, what was going through my mind was, I don't think we're gonna prevent that from happening, but I think that we might be able to put in some guidelines and say, under these conditions, add 25% or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, maybe there's a formulaic way of dealing with this. I don't know for sure, but.
Minimum, it should be, in the presentation, there's a basis of estimate that is written up. I mean, when we bid jobs, we have a basis of it, even when we estimate jobs. You have a basis of your estimate, so you understand.
Yep, and maybe that's a, logical replacement for what we're doing with the Collin, what we were doing previously with the Collin stuff, right? Which is maybe we publish a survey, which is 5 or 10 questions and it's yes or no or a ranking or whatever, and then we can apply some sort of formulaic adjustment based on where it comes from.
Well, then the topic of contingencies that Carter keeps bringing up, we don't put contingencies on any of this, and maybe we should be putting contingencies even this year on everything that goes forward.
Yeah, I guess my thinking on that is, does everything need a contingency or,
Every construction project.
construction?
Absolutely.
Infra.
Not every project is a construction project, so
Right.
therefore not everything needs a contingency, but absolutely construction projects do. Especially renovations,
Yeah.
because once you open something up, you have no idea what you're gonna find.
Is there a standard, like, do we know?
Oh, it's percentage?
Yeah,
Usually it's between 10 and 20, depending on the size of the job. And even in new construction, they have 10 to 20 because all of a sudden you start following the engineered drawings and you realize that on the engineered drawings, nobody took into consideration this, or you hit
Right.
something on the site, soil type or something, and you're like, oh, we didn't plan for this. So, yeah, 10 to 20,
Indian
somewhere in there.
cemetery.
Excuse me?
Indian
I mean, the reserve fund may be something else you could use that, because that would be unforeseen costs.
Yeah, I think there's a project, I think there's something about contractually, that we need Carter for that, because I think you can't use, like, it needs to be involved, and since that requires a vote of the FinCom, and therefore it is uncertain what the result of the vote would be, you wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not sure though, again, that's a Carter question.
We've passed 100% of the ones that have been there since I've been on, which is
Well, a good track record, I saw.
statistically meaningful
A
results.
good track record is still not, is still not a
and there was
certainty.
one the year before you joined, so there was 2 in my
Right.
in my span of consciousness. So yeah. Okay, so that's a good start. I would ask if you guys think of anything else to bring it back to the next meeting. We'll start to kind of draw it up, and then I think we should have a discussion around do we draft some initial thoughts around each area and then, work it that way?
Sure.
So, okay. All right, any public comment?
Yeah. None.
No.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Favor? Favor?
I don't.
I say aye, sir.
I apologize. I believe that needs to be a roll call vote.
Oh, you're
because
right.
We're a hybrid
Oh,
meeting.
You're right, good catch.
Just to make
Thanks,
sure
sir.
we're official.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate that, you were right. We will have a roll call vote. Mr.
I could drop, you won't need it.
Mr. Menard,
Aye.
Mr. Brenner,
Aye.
Mr. Alonso.
Aye.
Mr. Bowen.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. We will see you in 2 weeks.